Forget what you learned in school. Never mind what your parents told you, and disregard what your friends say. From now on, the only people you need to listen to are these guys. For the next several minutes, they'll take you on a journey through the political jungle. And when your journey is over and you're safe at home, they promise you'll be stronger, smarter, and just plain better. So buckle up, hang on to your ears, because your journey starts now. Welcome to another episode of At Odds.
Hello.
Recorded in the back room of the Doubleheader Bar and Studio.
All right.
Greater Lansing area in the great state of Michigan and the wonderful country of the U.S. of A.
It is a wonderful country, isn't it?
For the most part, it's got issues. It's still growing.
Yeah, I mean,
still developing.
Yeah.
You know, we need to get it back on track a little bit.
Relatively new.
It is relatively new. You know, and they say democracies last a couple 100 years, and we're about there. So
they do, and we're not a democracy. So I mean, they may say that,
but still,
it wouldn't. Democracy leads to things like we have in Egypt and in places like that. I'm not a big fan, but you know, what are you going to do? Anyway,
well, today's show, I think we're going to discuss the second U.S. presidential debate,
which we wouldn't have in a democracy,
and we'll talk a little bit about the Al Smith charity dinner, where they kind of roast the presidential candidates. They get together on one stage, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, they generally roast each other. They give speeches, and
it's a chance. It's a lighthearted.
Yeah, in theory, they put
fundraiser for.
You put politics aside, sort of.
Catholic charity.
Yeah, it's a Catholic charity. Their goal this year was to raise $5 million.
Started in 1945.
45.
A year after Al Smith, who was the first Catholic U.S. presidential candidate, and they.
How'd that work out for him? I don't
dead.
think he won.
He's dead.
Is he?
Yeah, and it's at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. Very classy, ritzy place. It's not the Ritz, but it's close.
Right. It was a white tie event.
White tie, and it's a big deal, and it's a lot of fun for everybody, and it's for a good cause. Raises all kind of money. What was their goal?
$5 million.
They wanted to raise $5 million.
$5 million.
So I imagine it cost probably $20, $30 to get in. Yeah.
To walk through the door.
That was just to stand outside and go, looky there,
looky there. If you wanted a seat, yeah, it would cost you a bit of money. But.
Thank you, sweetheart. Next time, put a little scotch in with that water. Anyways, so we're gonna
have that problem a lot, don't you?
I do.
You order scotch and water. You need to order your water separate.
No, I order scotch with a splash of water,
and that never works out.
And they tend to put more water than scotch, and I don't like that.
So you should order straight scotch on the rocks.
And
water separate.
Yeah.
Mix it yourself.
You know, and that's why you're the producer of the show.
That's why I am the producer of the show, and why I drink Pabst Blue Ribbon, because the bar never gets the formula wrong.
But what are you drinking today?
What is this? This is a Guinness Black Lager.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
It's new by Guinness.
New, cold brewed with roasted barley.
And maybe Guinness will send us a 6-pack now that we've plugged them. I doubt it, but it's not a bad beer. I had one.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So anyways, we're going to talk about the debate, and again, as I'll mention, no one really cares about presidential debates. It really doesn't.
I disagree with that.
It doesn't really make a difference. I don't know that it sways one person too much one way or the other.
That
Although, you know, they had 65 million people again listening in, because I think it's a close race, and I think people are understanding a little bit about the importance of this election more than a lot of the other elections as a turning point in our country's
and I think it was
history.
This is a huge range, but somewhere between 30 and 50 million that watched the vice presidential debate last week.
That's quite a bit, too.
So, I mean, for that, because that really doesn't sway too many people. That was a pretty good audience. This one, yeah, like you said, a lot of people watched it. It was a town hall debate. So
I like that format.
Yeah, not so much anymore, but
a little bit more informal.
In theory, in reality, there were 80 or 82 lucky audience members that got to sit up on stage, and they were the ones that asked the questions.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of questions. There wasn't even a lot of questions.
There weren't a lot of questions, no.
But it gives them a chance to free ball a little bit, and
that's what it is good for. supposedly these were undecided voters that were asking the questions, and it lets you see both candidates kind of think on their feet because they don't know the questions are coming. The moderator, Candy Crowley from CNN, she picked the questions.
Right, she actually knew the questions,
which was
coming.
obvious when we saw it, and when she had documentation.
Influenced it a little bit.
Yeah, she influenced it a lot, but yeah, I think she did way worse than Jim Lair did in the first debate. She definitely interjected, and what she did, the input she did have, she was wrong.
Yeah.
And admitted the next morning that, well, I was kind of wrong about that. You know, it's like, well,
hey, it's recorded live, 65 million people. There's a little bit of pressure there.
There should be no pressure
come on.
for her to interject her comments in on the questions.
No, I meant about getting things wrong, and I mean, it's got to be a high pressure thing.
You know, and I'm sure I would be nervous as hell.
Listen, I get nervous before doing this show, and we have 3 listeners. So I mean,
I don't know if we do.
Not that many
if
anymore.
We do have 3. We had 3 listeners.
Did Bill leave?
Bill left.
I like Bill.
Bill and his 2 wives that he forced to watch, listen to it with him.
We lost all 3 viewers?
All 3 are gone, yeah. Well, they had to move because the laws in Michigan don't allow for that. He was, he lived in Michigan. And
he had a nice dog.
Well, his dog's still around.
He left the dog?
His dog refuses to listen to our show.
Well, then I don't like the dog so much.
No, that's not a nice dog.
Anyway,
the point I was talking about with Candy Crowley interjecting her own opinions that she thought were facts.
Oh, that's your opinion.
This debate, the questions were open to foreign or domestic policy. We know we've had big things happening in the Middle East, in Libya, Egypt lately, Syria, Turkey. Turns out now it is Libya, Turkey, and Syria that are the focus of this. But we had an ambassador killed, 3 other Americans killed.
Yep.
The embassy consulate was attacked. Was attacked by Al Qaeda affiliated groups at least.
Yeah.
We know the administration came out and for 2 weeks called it a spontaneous protest.
Okay, you're going to bring this up again.
I'm bringing this up because it was part of the debate. And we just found out this week that it seems like the U.S., has been giving guns to Turkey to arm Syrian rebels. And right before the ambassador was killed, he had dinner with the Turkish ambassador.
Oh.
So there's something a little iffy going on there. We can get into that in another show. I have a lot more on that. But
okay.
The question came up was, why did it take so long, basically, to tell the American people that it was a terrorist attack? What was the deal? Blah, blah, blah. Barack Obama came up and said, well, I held a conference in the Rose Garden, and the next day, the day after, and I called it an act of terror. I said this was a terrorist attack. And we know that the night before, he went to bed before he found out that the ambassador was even dead because he had to get up and go fundraise in Vegas the next day, right? So he went to bed, didn't know what was going on. Yeah, you do, and his is fundraising. He got up, went. He did have this little thing. He made a speech in the Rose Garden, went to Vegas for a fundraiser. Well, Mitt Romney came up and obviously heard that Obama said,
it's a terrorist attack,
said that it was a terrorist attack, and so he definitely brought that up because Obama did not say that. But we'll get into that in a minute here.
Okay.
I certainly do. I think it's interesting the president just said something which is that on the day after the attack, he went to the Rose Garden and said that this was an act of terror.
That's what I said.
In the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror.
That's right.
It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I like that.
I want to make sure we get that for the record because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror. It did as well take 2 weeks or so for the whole idea of there being a riot out there about this tape. to come out. You're correct about that.
The administration indicated that this was a reaction to a video and was a spontaneous reaction.
They did.
It took them a long time to say this was a terrorist act by a terrorist group.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing. The audience was not supposed to applaud or cheer or boo. Michelle Obama was caught clapping, so that's just an interesting side fact.
Well,
so
I don't know. Did in fact he say that in the Rose Garden?
And we'll get to that. I have an audio clip of the portion
of that talk?
Well, I don't have the whole talk. I could get it if you want to hear it.
No, but
I have.
You have a pertinent piece of it?
Yeah. What was interesting about this, Candy Crowley knew what the questions were, but she had the transcript. I mean, what are the chances, right? She has the transcript of this Rose Garden speech with her on stage. And she says, oh, yeah, well, he did in fact call it an act of terror.
And is that what she said she got wrong? Later?
And that is what Obama said terror in the speech.
Yes.
He was talking in broad terms.
Okay.
And I can give you the sentence that he used that term in.
So we're talking semantics.
It is semantics, yeah. Yes. Here, let's listen to what he actually said in the Rose Garden, and then I'm sure we'll disagree on this.
No acts of terror will ever shake the resolve of this great nation, alter that character, or eclipse the light of the values that we stand for.
Okay, so that was the sentence that he said, act of terror.
Okay, and I will grant you that is a broad term in that regard and in that use, because unfortunately, and I'll get off track on this, unfortunately this administration and the last administration under Bush likes to use the word terror for every frigging thing.
And this is going against my point, but
I'll give you an example.
This administration...
I'll give you an example in Michigan. When this started, this was a few years after 9/11, a state of Michigan employee was mad at his boss up in the Upper Peninsula in the boondocks of Michigan, way up in the North Woods, tried to kill his boss. And that was reported for FBI and federal statistics as an act of terror. Wasn't murder. Wasn't attempted murder.
When was this?
Which
administration? Was it Bush or Obama?
It was about 2003 or 4, somewhere in there, so it was Bush.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that the statistics on terrorist attacks now include attempted murder attacks on someone who happens to be a government employee that had nothing to do with any kind of quote terror or political reasons. It was a personal reason.
Yeah.
So and that's
and
crap.
I understand that.
And that's how they use terror.
But like I said, this is going against my argument a bit. This administration came in and wouldn't say war on terror. Right? They wouldn't call these they wouldn't say radical Islamists. They would not say that, right? And they wouldn't call these people terrorists. We had the shooting in Fort Hood, right?
Right.
Obviously
a terror,
a radical
religious
Islamist guy. He got up on a table. He's yelling Allahu Akbar.
Yep.
Right. They called it a workplace, an act of workplace
just
violence.
The opposite of what I just gave an example of.
Right.
The one I gave is a workplace violence.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was Bush, and I'm not defending Bush.
Right. I'm
points.
just saying these are the statistics that are used to try to convince the American people that Homeland Security and the TSA and all these things are needed to infringe upon our freedoms and our civil liberties.
And I agree with you.
And it's a manipulation of terms to create data, and it's crap.
Now, with this,
your argument is he wasn't calling this necessarily a specific act of terrorism.
No, and this was a while after he was specifically talking about Benghazi.
Okay.
And if he knew and labeled it a terrorist attack the day after it happened, why for 2 weeks did his administration, secretary, I won't get into that, but his administration called it, or blamed it on this video and said it was a spontaneous protest.
Right.
So either he labeled it a terrorist attack and then lied to the American people for 2 weeks, or he just never thought it was a terrorist attack.
Let me throw this out here. Maybe it was a national defense misinformation.
Oh, no,
tactical.
No way.